Hello and welcome to the Property Unleashed podcast with me, Mark Fitzgerald. It's fantastic to have you joining me here today. And I am absolutely delighted and super excited to have Simon Zutshi joining me here today. Welcome to the show, Simon. It's great to have you on.
Hello, Mark. Really pleased to be here. And I'm equally excited about our conversation today.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'm just going to give the listeners a quick rundown of who you are and what I know about you, and then it'd be great to hear it from your own words as well. But I obviously met you, I think at Strategy Implementation Live. I think it was the beginning of 2019, and that was brilliant. I went on to do obviously your 12-month mastermind program. But Simon himself is an experienced investor. He's a successful entrepreneur, and he is a best-selling author. He is widely recognized as one of the top wealth creating strategists in the UK, having started to invest in property in 1995. He went on to become financially independent by the age of 32. Passionate about sharing his experiences, he funded the Property Investors Network in 2003, which has grown to become the largest property network organization in the UK, with monthly meetings in 50 cities, designed specifically to provide a supportive, educational and inspirational environment for people, with like-minded people all networking and get together and learning from successful investors. And I am glad to say that I am the host of one of those network meetings as well, the Great North. But since 2003, Simon has taught thousands of entrepreneurs and business owners how to successfully invest to create additional streams of income, giving them more time to do the things that they really want to do and build long-term wealth. Simon's book, Property Magic, which is now in its 6th edition, became an instant hit when first released in 2008 and remains an Amazon #1 best-selling book, as it is always there at the top of the charts. Simon launched his latest business, Crowd Property, in 2014, which is an FCA-regulated peer-to-peer lending platform to facilitate loans between private individuals and property professionals. Welcome again to the show, Simon.
Thank you, Mark. I mean, pretty much we could finish that. You pretty much said it all, really. But yeah, it's great to be here, Mark. And also, obviously, I know you've done Mastermind. You were one of our top performers, did really well, and obviously everyone knows that you became a real expert in rent to rent. And I just want to say it's great that you now come back and teach our masterminders about rent to rent, because it's a strategy that I've taught people. I don't actually, it's one thing I teach, I don't do myself. So I'd much rather get someone like yourself who's gone and applied what we've taught you, been very successful, and then come up and teach people a mastermind. And we run a home study program with you, and you've just I think we've just had a new intake into that. So how's it going with all those guys?
Oh, brilliant at the moment. So yeah, two weeks ago they all started. We had obviously the current masterminders that are going through your process at the moment and through your program. And we obviously have a few other people that don't join mastermind but are interested in the rent to rent strategy, and we get them all together. Obviously we give them a really supportive environment, which I really enjoy, through the Facebook groups and the coaching calls. And there's some people are out there smashing it already. I've already had deals sent my way for me to just review and have a quick look about. So no, I'm really enjoying it. As you know, I love to give back. I like to support people, and it's something that I'm really excited about.
Great. Well, it's great to have you back in the community and continue to grow. And you know what? The other thing is I love about you, Mark, is you recognize that it's a journey, right? And you never know it all. And one of my favorite sayings, you don't know what you don't know. And it's great. I know you come back to some of our events and things, and you're still there. You're in the community. You recognize that you can always learn more. You always pick up extra tips. And I think that's why you've been successful. Is one of the reasons is you're quite determined, but also you have a real open mind, recognizing you can always learn more. One of my favorite sayings I've said before is you don't know what you don't know, and having that open mind about always learning and picking up from other people and wanting to come back and help other people. I think that's one of the reasons you've been successful, Mark.
Well, I'd like to agree, because when I started my mastermind year, I threw everything I had at it. And basically, I was doing at least one networking event a week. If I could get 2 in, I was getting 2 in. And it was about getting out there and meeting people, and not necessarily just people in your area. Because if you're looking at doing a strategy like rent to rent, a lot of people do buy properties in different areas and then want somebody to manage it for them and look after it. So that was my sort of take, and obviously looking for investors and people that you could potentially work with in the future. But I went down and did Strategy Implementation Live this year, which was a hybrid event that you obviously you run these big events. You have Property Magic as well. And I came back to that, and it's just to get back in the room, associate yourself back in that environment. And also it's to meet new people, because of course you had a new host of masterminders there. And it's really nice to get back out there, connect with people and see what's happening up to date right now in the property world. So yeah, I love getting back in there, and I do enjoy the events that you, of course, that you run as well, because you've got like-minded people there all supporting each other. And I say exactly the same. It's all about the community and the people that you surround yourself with. So, I mean, if you could just cover a couple of little things for people, you know, for you starting out and stuff like that. Obviously, you know, you've got to you become very successful in property investing, but let's just have a high level overview of Simon's journey, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you a quick potted version. So I started investing properly back in 1995 when I actually bought a house for me to live in. And I'd been renting in Selly Oak because I'd been at Birmingham University, and I'd finished in 95. I actually didn't get a proper graduate job. So I was just renting my old student house, and I got a job to pay the bills and to show I was employable. And I really focused on getting a graduate. A lesson here for everyone: if you want something, you have to really commit to it. It's not going to happen if you treat it like a hobby. So if you want to be a successful investor, even if you're doing it part-time, you've got to commit and make a real decision to do it. And so I committed to get a really good graduate job. And this was in the days when you'd fill in these 4 or 5 page application forms before the internet, no copy and paste. It's all handwritten. And you have to write about, you know, when did you solve a difficult challenge? I think, oh, I don't know if I've ever done that, you know. And so I really focused on that. And I got a very good job at the end in Cadbury's in Birmingham. And as soon as I got a job offer, I bought a house. And they're all kind of little terraced houses, big enough for more than one person. So I rented out 2 rooms to my friends who were at uni. So I kind of lived for free. And then I started a student nightclub business, which was a good fun business to do at that age. And I had this money in my business bank account after a couple of years. So I bought my second property in 1998. I moved out of the first one into my second one, which was closer to work at Cadbury's. And then I basically rented that out to students. So I've kind of been a proper student landlord from 1998. And I had a real light bulb moment, Mark. And that was, at the time, I was still on the graduate scheme at Cadbury's, and I was probably putting in, I don't know, a couple of 100 hours, 200 hours a month, because you move around the company in different jobs and you sample the business, and you're supposed to try and impress someone who's going to give you a job, hopefully at the end of that graduate scheme. So I was working really hard, really enjoying it. Doing my nightclub stuff in the evening as well. But I realized that I was earning about £1,500 a month from my job. And yet this little rental property I had, just a 3-bedroom student property, which I spent maybe, I don't know, 2 hours a month looking after, if that, was making £500 a month. Now, it wasn't as much of the job, but it was like, you know, a 100th of the time. And I thought, hang on a minute. Why am I working so hard at Cadbury's? So I thought that was a real light bulb moment. So I started to buy a few more. And by 2001, I had enough, not to replace my income, but to give me enough to live on. So I made the very brave, some might say stupid decision to give up this amazing corporate career, because I'd become a senior manager by then. And my boss and the director was mentoring me. He said, Simon, you're crazy. What are you doing? You're leaving this dream job. And it was a great company, great product, great people. But you know what, Mark? I just enjoyed my freedom more. And, you know, when you work for somebody, you might have 5 weeks holiday a year. That's just not enough, right? And so I went out on my own. I was doing some club stuff still, and I was dabbling, and I do think it was dabbling in property, and it took me a couple of years. So by 2003, I'd completely replaced my income from my former job at Cadbury's, and I'd done all right in property, but I realized that, you know, I'd also made lots of mistakes, and I'd learned the hard way on my own through trial and terror. And I thought it's got to be a smarter way. And a few years prior to that, I'd started investing in my own personal development. I'd done courses with Brian Tracy and Tony Robbins. And I learned from Tony Robbins, something you mentioned earlier, the importance of environment and getting like-minded people around you. And I was going to breakfast network meetings. I'd met some great mortgage broker, solicitor, accountant, all the people I needed for my property business. but none of them actually invested in property themselves apart from their own home. So I thought, I want to get around people who are like me, who understand what I'm trying to achieve. And my friends are busy working. They didn't get it. My family had never invested. So I went online to see if there's some sort of group, some like my business networking. I said, was there some sort of property networking? And there wasn't. So I took the initiative to set up the very first networking in the UK for property investors in 2003, called it Property Investors Network. And the rest is history now. We now have 50 meetings around the country, physical, a couple of virtual ones. We have an international one for people who want to invest from overseas in the UK. And it's run by people like yourself, Mark, who've come and done our training, who've done really well, and who kind of want to give back, and who recognize by being a local pin host as a bit of good positioning and credibility for them as well. I never dreamed to have this big network. And actually, I've recently sold my training business and my network business for good amounts of money. And actually, I'm staying on the business partly because I love what I do, but also my job is now to grow this little baby internationally. So as a creator, I like to do new things, and I think it's going to be a very exciting few years. That's pretty much my short history.
Short history, full story. No, it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and that's what it's all about. And I mean, you can tell from an early age you had the entrepreneurial instincts. You know, you were creative in building other businesses, and of course, you were very savvy in seeing what you saw you could make money in and things like that. And for me, it took me a lot longer to get out of the corporate world and actually see, you know, there's opportunities everywhere, but you've got to be open-minded to the opportunities that are out there. Otherwise, they just pass you by. And for years and years, as I say myself, for years, everything went past me until I actually stuck my head out of the parapet, so to speak. And I thought, hang on, there's more to life than this 9-to-5 grind and everything. And if you actually spend the time to learn how to do these things successfully, you can make businesses out of them and obviously give yourself the time freedom that you want. And I know you're quite an avid, you like to travel more. So obviously with the COVID times that we've been having, it just stopped you, isn't it?
Yeah, COVID was a complete nightmare. Partly because a lot of people had a lot of time off and took it nice and easy over COVID. Things got a lot busier for us because all our events were live in person. We had to put everything online. So that was a huge amount of work. And then obviously it's stressful living with partners and things in close proximity. And that's always, and unfortunately, a lot of people had challenging times over COVID because that, let alone the kind of the obviously pandemic. And then even worse, we don't get to go out and travel and do the things. So it was a difficult time for many people. But you know what? Sometimes challenges come along and you can either just throw your hands up in the air and do nothing about it, or you can embrace it and do something and change. And you're absolutely right, Mark. It's for me, investing in property gives you choice and freedom about how you spend your time. And I know you're very active on social media, and I love it when I see you're posting saying, you know, you're out with the kids during the summer holiday doing stuff. And, you know, you would not have been able to do that if you were stuck in that corporate life, right? And yes, having money is great, but the most valuable gift I think you've got, and I get you're the person who's done the hard work, Mark, but you put your head above the parapet, you recognize there's something else, you've invested in yourself, which takes a lot of courage to do, right? To back yourself. You've done it, you've taken action, you've got results. And now you are reaping the benefits, and spending the time with your kids, that's just priceless, right? You can't put a price on that.
Well, it is. It's the time you can't get back, and I miss too much of it. So I've decided no more. No, I'm not missing it anymore. So yeah, I mean, just spending time with them, just being able to take them to and from school and stuff. Simple little things that maybe some people could take for granted. I couldn't, because I couldn't do them, but I now have the time to be able to do those as well. And I say with the education things, and people say to me, "You've spent a lot of money." I'll continue to spend a lot of money on education as well, because once I've learned it, nobody can take it away from me. At the end of the day, it's not something that you just pay for once and then that's it. You bought it for life. So as long as you actually put into practice what you are learning, it's worth every penny. And it's probably actually cheap in the long run when you can actually make some good money out of what you're learning.
Well, if you think about it, you know, if you're investing, and by the way, let's just be really clear, not every education is the same, and you always need to do your due diligence, et cetera, right? But if you're investing, if you want to buy property or invest in property, and the average property in the UK, I think it's about £300,000 now. And we have, I know you've done our Mastermind Accelerate. People, our training's slightly different because, you know, no one could just say, call up the office, say, I'd like to pay to do Mastermind. You can't do that because And I don't think any other training company offer that. If you want to pay for their top program, of course you can pay. Well, you can't do that with us because we have such a great track record. We want to make sure we maintain that track record. So we say, look, you got to come and do our 3-day mastermind accelerator, first of all. And on that, we teach you all the strategy from the year-long program. And many people, they don't need to do mastermind having done our accelerator. They just go off and do it on their own. But I think people like yourself, Mark, recognize that although you could have done it on your own, you wanted to get the help, you want to get the support, the accountability, and obviously you've done very well because you did mastermind. But even sometimes people say, oh, what, £3,000 for accept? That's a lot of money. Well, is it? I mean, if you're buying a £300,000 property, average value in the UK, and we're going to teach you how to do that correctly and probably save tens of thousands off the next property you buy. And as you say, once you've got the knowledge, every property you buy, spending 1% of the purchase price is actually a very small investment relatively. And then actually you don't even need to buy properties because obviously we teach strategies such as rent to rent, which obviously you've now become a real expert in yourself. And even better than rent to rent is purchase these options where it's very similar to rent to rent, but you also get the right to buy the property in the future if you want to do that. And some of these things, and because they don't teach you in school, they don't teach you in college, unless you've got family, friends, or family members or friends who do this stuff, how on earth are you ever going to learn about it? And yes, you can learn for free. I mean, I put a huge amount of content out for free, as I know you do as well, Mark. And free is a great place to start. But the problem with free is that if you haven't invested anything, sometimes people don't value it because they've not paid for it. And, you know, I put some amazing information out there for free, and I know people act on that and use it, and they're very successful. And it's great they do that. But I sometimes share exactly the same information in one of my courses. And yes, it's organized in a structured way to make it easy to implement, etc. But it's amazing how people, once they've paid for it, take action. I give the same advice to someone for free and they don't do it. Isn't that amazing, Mark?
Well, it is. I think a lot of it's about accountability. I think when you actually put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. I know for a fact that, like I say, when I did Mastermind, I went all in. So I was doing everything. You know what I mean? If there was something to do, if there was a webinar to turn up to, you know, coaching calls were always on time and I was there. I was going to nail everything. I never wanted to let not only other people down, but myself down or my family. So, you know, you pay the price it is, and then you've got that accountability on yourself to say, I've spent my money, I now got to take the action. And it does make you think, I need to do something.
Yeah, you want to get a return, and you are invested in your own success.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I was on both sides of the coin. So obviously, up until realistically about 2018, I wouldn't have paid for any training. I was adamant, I'm not paying for anything. I'm not doing anything. I started to go to networking events, but I wasn't. You know, I thought, I know, trying to sell you all this training. It's you know, because that's my mindset. But as I spoke to more and more people and I said to them, well, how have you done that? Well, I did this and I learned how to do this. So now I go and do this, and I built a business doing it. And I was just like, well, when I heard about rent to rent, I thought that'll never work. The landlord's never going to give you his property. Why would they do that?
No.
Just look after it themselves. No, exactly. But then, like you say, you go to networking events and you speak to people. I spoke to the host then of the Sheffield Pin at the time, and they were doing some rent to rents and things. And it was like, oh, hang on a minute. If they can do it, then why can't I do it? And if I want to do it, I want to put my own sort of spin on it as well. I want to build it as a business. That's something that, I do have to do work. Don't get me wrong. We all have to do work at the end of the day, but I don't mind the work. It's my business. And I also, it means that it funds my life and also funds me being able to have a team around me, so to speak, to sort out the bits and bobs and also run the properties. So I think it's great, but it takes time. And I think that's the other thing. In today's world, everybody wants success. They want everything right now. And when you say, oh, it's going to take a bit of effort, you know, it's a bit like marketing letters. I'm a big advocate on marketing letters, but you've got to keep doing it consistently and persistently. Otherwise, they may not work. But if you keep doing it, and that's where I've got most of my deals from, it's just keep that marketing going, keep networking, keep putting yourself out there every single angle that you can and speaking to people. And as you've always said, you know, it's a numbers game and property is a people's business. Property problem solvers, and you see what you can do. So, it's massive. And the accountability and everything is what you need.
Yeah, you're right. Some people, they kind of think, oh, I want to replace my income. I want to do this. And they might try something, they dabble with something, they don't do it properly, and because of that they don't get results and think, oh, that doesn't work, to give up. But you that's why you've got to have an open mind, and you nailed it really when you said, I was meeting other people who've done it, and I'm thinking, if they've done it, I can do it as well. That's why it's so important to get around other like-minded people. And if someone else has done it, it means it's possible. And that doesn't mean you're going to do it, but it means it's possible. And if you look into them, to what they've done and how they've done it, and replicate the route they've gone, you're going to save yourself years of time, effort, and wasted money by making expensive mistakes. And look, my first 8 years was really doing it on my own. I did okay, but I also did some pretty stupid things because I didn't know what I didn't know, and I'm always learning. And I'm, I spend probably about £50,000 a year on my own personal development, not so much in property now, but more in business and speaking and those kind of things. And that's because I earn quite a lot of money. I can do that. And obviously I'm not suggesting it should be a percentage of what you earn, but you are your most valuable asset. And as you say, when you invest in yourself, when you learn some skills, you can use those skills for the rest of your life and keep getting a return on that investment for as long as you possibly want. And that's the really powerful thing, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's you that said it as well. Is the most important real estate in the world is the real estate between your ears.
Yes,
and that's one of those things that it is. Power is in the knowledge that but you have to take the actions as well. So, I mean, with the recession and everything that's coming at the moment, and inflation and interest rates and everything rising, and being a savvy investor like yourself, what are you actually looking at doing in the marketplace? Would you be looking at buying properties at the moment, or would you be waiting it out to see what happens?
That's a great question. And look, no one knows what's going to happen, right? I think most people believe that we are going into a recession. I think the press is talking themselves into it, but it feels like that. I see that inflation's over double digits, but it feels like it's a lot more than that now, because I've seen how much things cost in supermarkets, obviously cost of fuel, cost of air. I mean, I like to travel. I can't believe how much airline travel is at the moment because of the cost of fuel. The cost of just heating, interest rates go. So the average person has less money in their pocket. That's a reality, which means they've got less money to spend on other goods and services, which means businesses are going to sell less. They're going to contract. They're going to make people unemployed. And that's the downward spiral into recession. Okay. So that is happening, and there's nothing you could do about it, but you can decide how you feel and how you react to that. Either it's doom and gloom and, oh my God, everything's terrible, or you recognize as savvy investors that, investing in time of recession is actually the very best time you can invest, because most people are running for the hills and panicking as they did in 2008, 2009. But the savvy investors who know what they're doing recognize it's a great time to pick up opportunities. So no, I'm not waiting. I'm actively looking. Like you, I do a lot of work with landlords. There were lots of landlords who I think, there's always people coming into the market, starting, and always people exiting and retiring from the market. So that always happens. But now, over the last couple of years, we've seen more and more landlords looking to retire because of things like Section 24, where we pay more tax if you own property in your own name. So people have been selling up or moving into a company. So going forward, buying in a company is probably the best way to do it for most people. We've got things like in 2025, they're saying that you have the energy performance certificate's got to be a level C or above. Well, lots of landlords have to spend lots of money to get their properties up to spec. We're seeing the abolition of Section 21. All these things happening, and add to that, landlords seeing interest rates going up. So the profits they've been making the last 10 years are being squashed. I think we're going to see more and more landlords decide to sell up. So what does that mean? Well, if all that stock comes onto the market over the next year or two, there is a massive, strong underlying demand for accommodation in the UK, which is great. And it might soak up all that extra demand, but all that extra supply, but it might not, which means that property prices might start to decline. Now, if that happens, I think there'll be lots of landlords who remember what happened in 2008, 2009. They saw property prices come down 20, 30% sometimes, and they might think, you know what, maybe I should sell my property now quickly, even if I sell 10 or 15% below the current value, because I don't want to sell when it's 20 or 30% down. And besides, everything they've had since 2010 has pretty much doubled in value anyway. We're going to see landlords retiring, which is a huge opportunity for you, me, and everyone listening to this podcast, because there are going to be some great deals. And it's going to take courage to invest when the market's coming down. But back in 2008, 2009, when I was guiding people through the last recession, I said, look, guys, as long as you're holding long-term, as long as you're making cash flow, and as long as you know you can rent it out, it doesn't matter if you buy something now and 6 months later it's a lower value, because you're holding long-term. You've only lost money if you have to sell an asset. But it's easier to find deals and get in when prices are slightly coming down, rather than when everything's booming and shooting up. So yeah, I'm actively looking for investments. I think they'll give some great opportunities. I don't do rent to rent that you do, Mark, but I do purchase lease option, particularly if you can get an option for 5 to 7 years, because the market might dip a bit. I want long enough for potential to recover, getting a great income in the meantime. And the thing about an option is that, you've got the right to buy, but not the obligation. So you get to benefit from this amazing cash flow for 3, 5, 7 years, just like rent to rent. But then if you want, you can potentially buy the property. And you know all about this, Mark, because I know you've done a purchase lease option. Maybe we should talk about that to explain to the listeners how that works and how you've done the deal and just how beneficial it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things that I do love about property is there's so many different avenues that you can go with it. And one thing I will say just on the top of that is, you do see some people just trying to shoehorn a specific strategy to a deal, just trying to make something work just because they know that one strategy. So it is worth knowing all the different, so to speak, strategies. And then you might not even learn them all, but you need to know, there's probably a good 4 or 5 that you just need to have the fundamentals of, because when you walk into any situation, and as I do with rent to rent, sometimes it's not a rent to rent deal. It's just not a deal at all. So in that case, then you need to recognize that. You need to try and work with the landlord, maybe point them in the right direction. I always try and leave it good karma and everything, point them in the right direction, show them what to do. But I got a 6-bed student let, and that started as a rent to rent negotiation deal. Obviously, you do some digging when you see the property. So I found out that they were trying to sell it a few months before. And when I went in there, they were just trying to rent it, just trying to get rid of it realistically. And it was in decent condition for a student let and everything. It was ready to rock and roll. And it was a case of, I just asked them the question that you taught me at the end of the day, which is, are you interested in? Now, I knew, because I'd done my homework, that they were interested in selling a few months ago. And they said, well, yeah, we are. And they had it on the market for about 220. So I just said to them, well, I'll tell you what, I'm not in a position right here, right now to buy the property, but I love the property. I'm still willing to take it on, manage it, and do all of the stuff that we do with the rent to rent, have my team look after it, manage it, offer them a guaranteed rent each month. But I want to, if we can, set a price in now. You guys can walk away, get on with your life. I'll pay you a guaranteed rent for the next 5 to 7 years. Now, like you say, the reason I've done a 5 to 7 year sort of deal is only because I just don't know what the market's going to be. So if prices do go massively down, I'm going to struggle to buy it at the price that I've agreed. So hopefully in the window that I've got, if times are going well, I shall just, use the option to buy it and get it bought. But if times are a little bit stickier, I've got a few years leeway to sort of work with the landlords. And they know this as well. Everything's explained to them. Nothing is done behind anybody's back. So they know that this is what we're doing. And there's no mortgage on this property as well. And so the beauty of this, and you don't get this on all purchase lease options, but this one, I actually pay them a guaranteed rent. And that comes off the end price as well. So I'm almost like paying them bit by bit, if you like, in installments for the property over the next, I say 4 to 5 years.
So you found someone who they were trying to sell the property. They couldn't sell it, so they just wanted to rent it because they want to sit there empty. It's got no mortgage on it, so they're getting an income from it now. And what you've done is, so you're going to make it. How much profit do you make on that after paying them and all the bills and everything? How much profit do you make each month, Mark?
After all, I make £620 on that, and I'm obviously up north, so rents are a little bit cheaper on that. It's a 6-bed property.
So this is a property
but that's after everything's paid for.
So you don't own it. You've not had to get a mortgage on it. You've not had to put a big deposit in. You're making £620 a month after all the costs. It's like best part $7,000 a year, whatever. And and then the 1,200 you're paying to them each month, that's added up. So that's 14,400 a year. That's counting towards your deposit. So when you buy it in 5 to 7 years, you will have given them all the money for deposit. So you'll be able to get a mortgage on that without putting in more money. So in other words, you're using kind of the rental income to actually be the deposit to buy that house for you. This is why I love this strategy. But as you quite rightly say, you don't always get to take the what you pay them off. It really depends on the structuring the deal. And as you're also right, options are a great shot, but they don't work for everyone. And you're right. If you have just one strategy, one tool, they're trying to fix out. If you have one tool in your toolbox, you've got a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail, right? But the hammer is not the appropriate tool. And you're right. You need to have a number of different strategies so you can help them get the solution that's right for them. That's also going to work for you. But I mean, how and that property, we don't know what it's going to be worth in 7 years. It might come down a bit, could go up it, but it could be worth 250, 300 maybe. And you get to buy it for 220 or 225, whatever you've agreed. Isn't that amazing?
225. And I mean, the beauty of that is I don't actually take any of the profits. I'm keeping all of that to one side because I know that the property is going to need an uplift. It's going to need care. It's going to need money put into it. But all of a sudden, I'm not putting money into somebody else's property anymore. I'm putting money potentially back into my property that I'm going to invest in myself. And because I've got that price locked in, if I spend 10, 20 grand or something to make it extra special, or maybe convert it to professionals, it's money well spent because it's my asset. And that could only help, hopefully, depending on what the market's doing when I actually come to buy it. So no, it is brilliant. It is brilliant. But these people, you have to find them. It takes a lot of effort to find them. Now, you might get lucky and just walk into one of these things, but it is, I'm going to say it's rare. It's not rare. They are out there, but it just takes a lot of work to find them, but it pays off. And that's where the consistency and persistency in your marketing and your networking. And I always say to people, particularly on my own training, is you want to be known as the property professional in your area. Now, you may not just want to be the property professional in rent to rent. You really, like you say, have all the tools. And that's why the other reason I do enjoy the home studies. Obviously, on Mastermind, we get access to all the different home studies that PIN offers out. But it gives you a chance to go through all of these different studies and learn all of these different tactics, which just help you in the long run. And as we always say, and I say it again, nobody can take that away from you. So you walk in and you have an aha moment. And it's just like, nah, this isn't a rent. Well, this is a rent to rent, but I could make this into a purchase lease option, or, we could even look at vendor financing if we wanted to actually, put an extension on the back and do some work with it without having to lay down the deposits and pay all the stamp duty and everything up front. So there's so many. I love it. I love property. It's just great. There's so many different things you can do.
And the thing I think people take away from this, one of the things is, as I said before, you don't know what you don't know. And you need to have that open mind to recognize there's always extra ways of doing it. And the problem is sometimes, Mark, people have a little bit of knowledge, which can be a dangerous thing because they think they know it, but they don't know it well enough. And they make assumptions like you mentioned vendor finance there. And I've seen people who are supposed to know what they're doing. And they've said, oh, no, vendor finance doesn't work because mortgage companies won't do it. And they're right. Mortgage companies generally don't do vendor finance. But then that's why you do it with bridging companies. And guess what? Wouldn't it be useful if there was a bridging company who kind of understood a development finance company who understood property strategies and go, oh, there is one. It's called Crown Property. There you go.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And
go on. Sorry.
I was going to say, it's just all these things come together. So you're absolutely right. It's about getting out there, meeting people, talking to people, learning from people, building the belief if other people have done it, you can do it as well. About educating yourself, picking your training carefully, obviously make sure that people know what they're talking about. They've got lots of successful students. It's about having that open mind, being open to learn more. And then it's about taking the action, Mark, whether it's landlord letters or going on Rightmove, contacting people, recognize it is a numbers game. There is an element of luck to a certain extent. But I found, Mark, the more action you take, the luckier you tend to get. Right?
It's surprising.
It is surprising, isn't it? It is right. You got to be consistent. You got to keep doing it. And as we said, people often, they want results too quickly. They give up too soon. And it's a real shame because I still believe that, investing in property is the second best thing you can absolutely do. And the best thing obviously is investing in yourself. But it does take time and effort. And it frustrates me where people think that it's get rich quick. Well, it's not. Get rich quick suggests that you make lots of money with no effort. Well, that's not the case. You can make a lot of money, but you do have to put time and effort in. And sometimes people are disappointed when I say that. So, well, what did you expect? You have to put the effort in, but the time and effort you put into your property investing, once you know what to do, will be the best rewarded time you've ever spent doing anything in your life. The thing I love about property, I mentioned my first property in 1995 that I bought. I still own that property. I still rent it out. As the value's gone up over time, I've remortgaged it. I've taken probably close to £180,000 out of that property. Cash I've not had to pay any tax on, by the way. And it still makes me a passive income every single month. Oh, and by the way, someone else is managing it. So I don't have any time input into it, apart from when I do things like remortgages. I've had £180,000 out of that property and all the rental income, and it's still going to keep going up in value over the long term, still going to keep giving me passive income each month. And I just put the time in once to buy that property. Work once, get paid for it. Now imagine you've got a few of those, it all adds up to give you a very nice position. And if you're sitting here thinking, oh yeah, but I'm new to property, I don't have any properties yet. Let me tell you, back in 1995, when I bought my first property, it was £48,500. I think I was earning 14.5 at Cadbury's as a graduate trainee. It was a lot of money to me. And a few years later, when I was looking to buy my second property, I wanted to be closer to work at Cadbury's in Bourneville. And I was actually looking at Bourneville, similar style houses to my house. And I noticed the houses there, were like £80,000. I thought, £80,000? That's ridiculously expensive. That's crazy. I'd never paid that much money. I bought in a slightly cheaper area, a bit further out, a bit further away from the university for about £55,000. And those houses I thought were really expensive in 1998 at 80,000. They're probably all 300,000 now. And the thing we need to remember, it always seems expensive when you're coming into the market. And it is a little expensive right now. It will correct and adjust. But in the grand scheme of things, in 10, 20 years, because we live on this island with a limited amount of accommodation and an increasing population, the long-term trend in property prices is up. So in 10 or maybe 15 years, on average, property prices are probably going to double again from where they are now. And I know that seems crazy, but thinking about that first house I bought back in 95 for 48,500, it's doubled and it's doubled again and it's almost doubled again. And that's what happens in property. So if you haven't started, it would have been great to start 25 years ago, but if you didn't do it then, the next best time is now. And with what's happening in the market and the potential changes, when a lot of amateurs are going to be scared off, there's going to be so much opportunity for those of us who are educated, who are ready and have the courage to go and take advantage of what's going to be, I believe, that one of the best buying opportunities of the decade. So it's time to get excited, time to get ready.
I think so. And the fact is, you've already done a recession, haven't you? You've been through recession times, exactly. And you're here to tell the tale and everything.
Yeah. I've got the battle scars. I know, and I don't think we're going to have such a crash as we had last time, but guess what? I know exactly what you need to do when the market's crashing, when we're in recession. And, there are lots of people out there like yourself, Mark, and you're doing a fantastic job. And, you teach our masterminds because you're great at rent to rent now. But there are lots of people like you who have not been investing that long, relatively speaking, and they're teaching other people how to invest, which is great. But they have no idea what's going to happen in a recession. Now you do, because I've taught you, and we're still connected, and you're still in the environment, and like you say, you're getting updated, you're plugging in, so you're getting the latest on what we need to do. But I feel for the people out there who have not been through this before, because there are going to be some winners and there are going to be some losers. Lots of losers from this recession. The good news is you get to choose which side of the equation you sit on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, if we're talking about, the economics and the times that we're in at the moment, I know for a fact with your home studies, which we spoke about before, you've got the purchase lease option one quite timely coming in September as well. But you've also got, a good webinar before that, haven't you, where people can come and they can learn more through that. So do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Absolutely, yeah. So whenever we do our training courses, we always like to give value to people beforehand, and we do free webinars where they kind of explain a strategy so they understand, like you would have thought about rent to rent. Why on earth would someone give their property up? Well, purchase option. Why on earth would someone agree to sell their property in the future at today's price and even give you the monthly payments off the end price? Why would they? That's impossible, Mark, surely. Well, no, it's not. And you kind of need to get your head around it. So we help people get their head around this to understand when are these appropriate tools to use and when are they not appropriate tools to use? How can you actually use them? Then people, when they get it, say, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And if they want to learn more, they can come and do an intense 6-week training course where they get a module each week. They get a coaching call each week as part of a group. And we don't have these courses available all the time. We tend to open them up at specific times when we happen to be taking our mastermind students through the training. And because this is such a great opportunity, we've jiggled this around. We're putting our new masterminders through this training first because I think it's the best thing to be doing right now. And then we open it up to people who are not on mastermind who say, actually, I just want to learn those particular skills. And you know, if I had to start again, I would probably go back and I would start with purchase lease options because they can be used in the right circumstance and they don't work all the time. Let's be really clear about that. You know, you find a seller who wants the money now, an option is not going to work because they're not going to get the money. They're going to get it in the future. But if you have retiring landlords, for example, or people who maybe inherited a property, they don't need the money, it's going to stick in the bank, an option can be a great solution for them, right? So you've got to know the right time to use these things. And, you know, we're teaching our students this. And the great thing about an option is it can be used in conjunction with every other strategy. So often when people are new to property, they say, well, one of the things that stops them moving forward is, well, I don't know what strategy. Should I be doing single lets? Should I be doing HMO? Should I be doing rent to rent? Should I be doing serviced accommodation on Airbnb? Should I be doing commercial to residential conversion? The beauty about options is they work with all of the other strategies. Options are really a tool instead of a strategy. And that's why it's so powerful when you understand. So I guess, Mark, what we'll probably do, we'll put a link in the audio description in the podcast notes. And if you're watching the video below this, where people can come up and sign up for a free 90-minute training to understand all about purchasing options so they can make an informed decision if it's just a tool they want to put into their portfolio. And if they do, they can come and do a training. And all our home study courses, they have a 14-day money back guarantee. So people can come on, they can just go through some of the training, experience some of the group coaching. And if it's not right for them, I probably give them their money back. And I think a good thing to do in business is always to reverse the risk, to take the risk away from doing business with you. And then you make it a bit of a no-brainer for people to come and give it a try. So we'll put a link in the show notes and maybe on the screen, whatever, for people to come and register for that training. It's happening pretty soon after this podcast is released. So take action on that right now. Mark, you're a great believer in that. You know, speed of implementation. If you see a good opportunity, a good property deal, you need to move quickly, because if it's a good deal, guess what? It will disappear. So you can't come into our training at any time. We shut it down at a certain date, and once it's gone, that's it. You got to wait till the next year. So, you know, and we do that because we want to encourage people to take action. First of all, we're trying to train them when they see a good deal to be decisive. But also, we like to take all the people, when we do a home study, through the group coaching course. So although they're studying at home, they're not doing it alone. There's a group of people they're going through. They get that benefit of learning from other people. We call it the network learning effect. You can be inspired by what other people are doing. You're motivated by what other people are doing. You get a bit of a kick up the bum sometimes if you're not doing it, saying, hey, if they're doing it, I should be able to do it. And that's why our students genuinely get great results. So, you know, if that's of interest to people, come and listen to the webinar and make a decision for yourself.
Well, that's the reason I wanted to bring it up. It was the main thing, is because at the end of the day, you've got nothing to lose. You know, click on the link, register, watch the webinar, and see what you think. And if you just learn something on the night from the webinar, then brilliant. And that's the beauty of it. Because as you say, you know, I put content out, you put content out there, and so do other people. So you can try and piece this all together. But then if you are really serious and you want to take this strategy to the next level in a step-by-step organized structure, which is massively important, because you know, we can go out on YouTube and read books and we can do all of this, but you're piecing it all together. And if you miss something, and this was always my biggest worry, was missing something that would be vital and maybe even cost me a fortune in the long run. And it could be something really, really simple. And as you say, you don't know what you don't know. So, you know, we'll put links in the show notes, QR codes and everything like that. take advantage of this, take action. Register for it and have a little look and see if you learn something else. And that's what I'm all about as well. It's about giving to receive, so to speak. I like to help people because because what goes around comes around, and it will come back your way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
If you were going to do rent to rent, Simon, I know you don't do rent to rent, but let's say, like you said earlier, if I lost everything and started again, you would be doing purchase lease options, but a couple of rent to rents might come your way. What would be like your top 3 tips, or your top 3 tips potentially for people starting out now?
Well, actually, essentially, I would always try and get a purchase lease option, first of all, if the circumstances were right. But if they weren't, I would downsell to a renter, because rent to rent is very, very similar, right? And I would encourage anyone who's doing rent to rent to ask that question. Say, hey, would you be interested in selling the property that we've taught you, Mark? And some people will, some people won't, but you can at least ask the question, right? So that's the first thing. I guess I'd always try and do PLOs first, but then downsell to rent. But if I had to give 3 tips about rent to rent, I'd do this. First of all, look for landlords that have got a problem. Okay, problem. And that problem could be that maybe they are a distant landlord and they're trying to self-manage, but they're not doing a very good job, and their property is only half empty, or maybe they've given it to a letting agent who's not very good, or they've had bad tenants, etc. So they've got a problem. They're getting frustrated, and they're people who are going to be more open to the concept of getting this guaranteed rent, where they get their mortgage paid every single month, their costs, and maybe make a little bit of profit. Not as much as they would if they rented it all out themselves, but they've got the certainty and peace of mind. So that's the first thing. Make sure you're finding motivated landlords who've got a problem that you can help. Secondly, when you find these people, and it is a numbers game, you find them through marketing and word of mouth and networking, etc. When you find them, never make any assumptions. Never assume you know what they want. Always ask great questions. Listen really carefully to what they say. Don't worry about what's the next question I'm going to ask them, because the next question you ask should be based on what they've just said to you. You're having a natural flowing conversation. So have a conversation, be there, be present, really trying to get yourself into their shoes and understand from their point of view what's going on for them. Because if you understand the problem and the pain, then you've got a much better chance of finding the aspirin, the solution that's going to help them and hopefully help you as well. And the third tip I would give you, and this is important, because people often say, well, what if the landlord wants a lot of money? And very often landlords are unrealistic about how much money they want, because when you're doing rent to rent, you want to pay the landlord a certain amount, but you want to make sure there's enough margin for you to make a profit. Bear in mind, you're going to have some costs as well you need to cover as well. So you've got to negotiate with the landlord. And here's a great tip for negotiating with the landlord. And you ask them, so how much can this property rent for? And obviously you always do your own diligence to check it out anyway. Then you ask them this killer question. You say, and how much are you currently receiving? Because they might be thinking, oh, yeah, I can get 2,400 for this. Yeah, okay, you could do, but what are you currently on? If they're only owning 1,400 right now and they're paying the bills and things, they're probably getting less than 1,000 in their pocket. They might have a mortgage as well. So if you could take away the hassle from them and you could work out what they're actually making, and if you could give them the same amount of profit, maybe even slightly more, but you're taking the hassle away, suddenly that's a really desirable proposition you're putting to them. So it's all about understanding what's the problem, how can you help them, and coming up with this ethical win-win. And I'm going to give you a bonus fourth one, Mark, and that's that for many people to speak to, it's not right now. It doesn't work right now, or they're not in enough pain. But guess what? In a month or 3 months or even 6 months or even 2 years later, suddenly your proposition might be really good. So the bonus tip, number 4, this game is all about follow-up. You might speak to people initially and they're not interested, but actually because you're keeping the relationship with them and keeping in touch and seeing how they're going, at some point in time, their circumstances might change. That actually your proposition is a really good proposition. So those are my 4 tips for you, Mark.
Brilliant. That's great advice. Thank you very much. And I'm sure the listeners will absolutely love it. But I will say most of my deals, if not probably all of them, have been through follow-up. have just been staying in contact, following up, letting them know I'm still here. I'm still a safe pair of hands. I'm the guy that you want to work with. You know what I mean? And just keeping that connection going. So no, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. So what I like to do, Simon, if you don't mind, is I do a little quick fire round, just ask you a few questions about different topics and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's just a bit of fun, really. It's just a bit of fun.
Yeah,
So what's the best advice you've been given or advice you've been given recently that you like?
The best advice I've been given recently, a great saying that actually came from my wife, Nav, and she got it from her dad. He said, and then she said to me, your dreams won't work if you don't.
That's good.
Your dreams, you can have these dreams and plans, but you've got to work. You've got to put some effort in to actually get them. Your dreams won't work if you don't.
No, I like that. That's really good. That's really good.
Yeah.
Cheers. And if you could sit down around, I mean, you probably can, but if you could sit around a table and pick three different people, doesn't matter who they are, who would you like to sit down and talk to? Who would you be interested to sit down with, dead or alive?
Oh, wow. Well, I've been massively inspired by Tony Robbins. I've spent a lot of money doing his training. It's completely changed my life. And actually was fortunate enough to speak for Tony at Wealth Mastery 3 times in the UK, which was pretty cool. But I'm not a good friend. I don't know him. I'm not on speed dial or anything. So he would be great to speak to because he's an amazing, inspirational person. So that's the first person. I think Gandhi would be pretty cool to speak to. I think the way his approach, how he was able to, talk about getting people behind you and having a cause and a mission and uniting a whole nation who were actually fighting amongst themselves to kind of fight against the British instead and kick them out. And what he did was pretty amazing. And actually my grandfather, I'm actually, you may not believe it looking at me, but I'm actually quarter Kashmiri. My dad was half Kashmiri. My granddad was full Kashmiri, which just next to India. And my grandfather actually knew Gandhi, knew the family quite well. So that was pretty cool. But obviously it was way before my time. So that he would be pretty cool. So Tony Robbins, Gandhi, and who else? Wow, I don't know.
Pretty on the spot.
You have put me on the spot. I should have prepared for this, really. Who would I like to
words? I've never heard you lost for words before.
Well, it happens sometimes, Mark. Who would I like to sit down to? I'm trying to think of a different kind of person. You know what? Ricky Gervais. Ricky Gervais.
Wow, that's a hell of a mixture.
Yeah, can you imagine that dinner party? But Ricky Gervais is my wife and I just watched an amazing Netflix special he did, and he's a very un-PC comedian if you don't know him, but that's why it's funny. But actually what he says, even though it's on PC, it's actually very, very true. So he's very funny, and yeah, it'd be great to sit down and have a chat with him. Yeah, so that's it. That's my 3: Tony Robbins, Gandhi, and Ricky Gervais.
That's great. No, that's brilliant. I love that. And do you have some podcasts that you like listening to or anything? The 3 top podcasts?
Yeah, I do. So, well, apart from mine, obviously. So I like to listen to Benjamin Hardy. He actually does, it's more videos he does rather than podcasts. Benjamin Hardy, Dr. Benjamin Hardy, very good friend of mine. Ben spoke at some of our events before, an incredible author. He's probably my favorite author at the moment as well. So he comes out with some great content, despite being early 30s. He's way beyond his age in terms of what he knows. One of the mastermind groups I'm in America is with Joe Polish, the Genius Network. He has a very good podcast he does with Dan Sullivan, which is all about 10xing your business, really, which is great. And what else do I listen to? Those are probably the main ones I'm listening to at the moment. Oh, and also Dave Asprey, who actually I met through Genius Network. He's the founder of Bulletproof Coffee, and he has a really good podcast, which is all about health and fitness and that kind of thing. So he's a pretty good listen as well, really.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And last but not least, your top 3 books.
Sorry, I missed that, Mark. The signal went.
Sorry, last but not least, your top 3 books.
Top 3 books. My all-time favorite has got to be Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It's a very old book, but you know what? The language is a bit dated, but it's absolutely true. It's an amazing book. Benjamin Hardy, as I said, Who Not How, recognizing you don't need to do everything yourself. You can get other people helping you. And then probably either The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson or The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, with a very, very similar concept of doing a little bit each day has this massive momentum effect. So those would be my favorite books, probably.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Thank you for that. And I'm conscious of your time and everything like that. I really do appreciate the fact that you've come on here for the listeners and everything. It's been great to have you on. Hey, more than welcome. Have you got anything you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
You know what? I just say thanks, Mark. And it's great that what you're doing. I mean, you've been really successful yourself, incredibly successful in Rent to Rent. And it's great that you're out there sharing what you've learned, helping other people, inspiring them. And you know what? My advice to everyone is that you want to find something to do that you're passionate about. Now, actually, property may or may not be that thing. For me, property is actually just a vehicle for you to become financially independent. Then you can do what you're passionate about. And it might still be property. It might be training people, which is what my passion is. But whatever you do in life, please enjoy yourself, follow your passion. But in order to do that, you sometimes need to put a bit of hard work in, a bit of graft in to get that income coming in so you can then spend the rest of your life doing whatever you want to do. And if you enjoy what you do, life becomes a breeze.
Brilliant. Great ending there. So I hope everybody's enjoyed this episode today. I surely have, and I shall be listening to it quite a few times and watching it again because this will be on YouTube as well. Thank you again, Simon, for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. It always is. It's always great to chat to you and to see you. And guys and girls, thank you very much. If you've enjoyed this, please like and share the podcast or the YouTube episode. We'll have all the links for the PLO, for the training on how to get in contact with PIN as well in the show notes. So do check those out. Invest with knowledge, invest with skill, as that man there would say himself normally, but I've got in there and said it instead. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care and bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.